In our headlines at this hour, legislators have granted the green light to a $49 billion extra budget bill to support the country's small business owners hardest hit by pandemic restrictions. Meanwhile, at the Cannes Film Festival, Kang-ho was named Best Actor for his role in the film Broker, while Chan-wook won Best Director for his work in the movie Decision to Leave. And South Korean Archbishop Lazzaro You Heung-sik is on the list of the 21 new cardinals appointed by Pope Francis. Hope your work week is off to a good start. This is the Daily Report for Monday afternoon, May 30th here in South Korea. I'm Min San-hee. The National Assembly has approved the Yoon administration's proposal for a supplementary budget in support of small businesses that bore the brunt of pandemic-related restrictions. As our Lee Kyung-won says, that budget is worth some $49 billion.
Following 2 days of delay, the National Assembly on Sunday passed an extra budget to provide COVID-19 relief payments to small businesses.
I declare the Budget Committee's revised bill has been passed.
This comes as the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party reached a last-minute agreement over the budget scale. And under the agreement, more money goes to more people than initially planned. Businesses with revenues under $4 million will get up to 10 million won, roughly $8,000. The money will be rolled out as soon as Monday, with the budget officially approved at the cabinet meeting in the morning. And businesses with less than $2.4 million in revenue can apply to get compensation for the losses caused by the pandemic restrictions. Meanwhile, freelancers and artists will get 2 million won in assistance, taxi and bus drivers 3 million won. This means some $31 billion in central government spending and $18 billion in grants to regional governments. Together, it amounts to slightly higher than the government's initial proposal at a record $49 billion. But the budget does not cover the hotly debated retroactive compensation, something the DP had requested. The PPP declined the proposal, citing both the lack of legal backing and that the calculating process could delay payments. They agreed to continue discussions. Despite lingering tensions, the parties apparently wanted to push the bill through before local elections coming up on June 1st, where the votes of some 3.7 million small business owners are at stake. And it was important that it was done by Sunday before the outgoing National Assembly Speaker's term ends. Any bill submitted after that would have to wait indefinitely until the next Speaker officially takes office. Yoon, Arirang News.
And Seoul's top finance official has disclosed a package worth some $2.5 billion to ensure the livelihoods of people here, as inflation is expected to top 5% this month. Our Ji-young reports.
The South Korean government has set out emergency measures to rein in runaway prices. Finance Minister Kang-ho unveiled on Monday a roughly $2.5 billion package to stabilize people's livelihoods. This came during his first meeting with economy-related ministers since his appointment earlier this month.
This emergency package includes 10 projects that are closely related to people's livelihoods, including food, living, and housing expenses that can be immediately executed.
First of all, the government will push to lower the burden of high food prices. It'll remove import duties on certain items that have recently seen prices surge. Until the end of this year, the government will impose quota tariffs on 7 food items, including pork, wheat, and eggs, meaning a certain amount can be imported duty-free. With this, the price of imported pork could fall by as much as 20%. Also, until the end of 2023, imports of coffee and cocoa beans will be exempt from value-added tax, bringing down prices by nearly 10%. Value-added tax of 10% on processed food, including kimchi and soybean paste, will be omitted as well. Under the plan, the government expects to bring down inflation by 0.1 percentage point. On top of food, Chu also announced support for living expenses.
To reduce the burden of living expenses, the government will provide help in areas including education, transportation, and phone bills.
Despite the hike in the base rate, the government will keep the interest rate of student loans steady at 1.7%, the same as in the first half of this year. Also, to ease the burden on car purchases, the government will extend the 30% deduction on consumption tax. The government also plans to bring down the property tax burden to a level similar to 2020, prior to surge in housing prices. 엄지영, Arirang News.
And President Yoon Suk-yeol is urging for bold action to cut the red tape hindering corporate investment. Remarks to this end were shared on this Monday during a meeting with senior secretaries. President Yoon claimed it was time for the government to respond to ambitious investment plans by the country's conglomerates that were disclosed last week. He also highlighted the need to tackle inflation amid the Bank of Korea's forecast of soaring prices for the time being. Meanwhile, in response to the National Assembly's passing of the extra budget bill, President Yoon called for prompt distribution of relief funds to small businesses. Meanwhile, on the pandemic front, South Korea's daily COVID-19 tally on this Monday has plunged the 6,000 level, the lowest in 4 months. A total of 6,139 new infections were announced today. Pundits are linking the decline, that is, to the weekend factor as fewer tests are conducted on Sundays. The number of COVID-19 patients in critical care also fell to the 200 mark, standing at 178. Meanwhile, 9 people lost their lives to the virus, and the single-digit figure is the first in 7 months. Over in France, the South Korean film industry scored big at this year's Cannes Film Festival. Kang-ho was named Best Actor and Park Chan-wook Best Director. Our Song Yoo-jin has the highlights.
It was a big win for South Korean cinema at the 75th Cannes Film Festival. And at the center of attention were the winners, Kang-ho, who won Best Actor for his performance in Broker, and Park Chan-wook, named Best Director for its film Decision to Leave. For Song, he made history by becoming the first Korean male actor to win an award at Cannes. Nicknamed the national actor in South Korea, Song stands as one of the most popular actors in the domestic film industry. But he rose to global stardom after starring in the 2019 hit film Parasite, the winner of the highest honor at Cannes, the prestigious Palme d'Or. Although this year marks his 7th invitation to the festival, Song had previously fallen short of winning an individual award. This time, his efforts paid off.
Kang-ho is an actor who possesses very distinctive and unique acting skills. I think the international film industry has finally recognized his amazing performances so that we can enjoy more of his work in the future.
For Park, he has added another trophy to its Cannes collection. The director's thriller Old Boy won the Grand Prix, the second most prestigious award at the festival in 2004. And in 2009, Park's horror movie Thirst picked up the jury prize, the third highest honor. This year, he returned with the romantic thriller Decision to Leave, once again leaving audiences in awe.
Right from the beginning, when I started preparing to make the film, I wanted to make a film for adults. Everyone said to me, "Oh, it's going to be really erotic, sexy film." And I thought how old that is what people expect when I say I want to make a film for adults. So I did the exact opposite.
Industry insiders say with the necessary input, Korea has the potential to nurture even more skillful actors and directors like Song and Park.
Acknowledging that figures like Kang-ho and Park Chan-wook contribute greatly not only to the Korean film industry but to Korean culture in general, there should be continuous investment in the cultural field, especially in liberal arts. And by investment, I mean both private and public, such as coming up with policies that help raise global awareness of Korean popular culture.
And through these efforts, the Korean film industry will continue to make its presence known on the international stage. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
A South Korean archbishop has been included in the list of 21 new cardinals appointed by Pope Francis. Our Kim Hyo-sun has more on this religious title and one of its tasks.
Pope Francis announced Sunday that he would appoint 21 new cardinals in August, including South Korean Archbishop Lazzaro You Heung-sik.
On Saturday, August 27th, I will hold a consistory for the creation of new cardinals. Here are the names of the new cardinals. Archbishop Lazzaro You Heung-sik, Prefect of the Congregation for the Clergy.
Yu, who is 70 years old, has been serving as the prefect of the Vatican's Congregation for the Clergy since 2021. He becomes the fourth South Korean to receive the cardinal red hat and is one of 16 new cardinals eligible to vote for the next pope. Speaking with Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency following the appointment, Yu stressed this was possible thanks to the Catholic Church's 240-year history in South Korea. He added that the appointment is God's calling for him to serve the church even more and vowed to continue living as a descendant of the martyrs. Yu served as the head of the Peace Committee for the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Korea and traveled to North Korea 4 times. His ardent prayer and hope has been lasting peace and reconciliation on the Korean peninsula. Other newly appointed cardinals come from the U.S., France, East Timor, and Singapore. Once again, Pope Francis has decided to appoint archbishops in countries where the church is small or growing. They will be officially installed at a ceremony to be held at the Vatican on August 27th. Kim Hye-sun, Arirang News.
And on that note, we end part 1 of the Daily Report. We'll be back with part 2 in a few minutes, so do stay with us.
Share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean New Day. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
So good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
Welcome back. On Viewpoint today, we address speculations about an imminent nuclear test by North Korea as the U.S. on this Monday marks Memorial Day in honor of all the military personnel who lost their lives serving their country. For more, I have Dr. Bruce Burnett from Rand Corporation here in the studio. It's a pleasure to have you here, Dr. Burnett.
Thank you.
I also have Professor Kim Young-jun at the Korea National Defense University live on the line. Professor Kim, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Burnett, we'll start here in the studio then. Does North Korea have a history of provocations against countries during the latter's national holidays?
Oh, absolutely. Historically, North Korea launched missiles on July 4th to try and call attention. Kim is very expert, he and his father before him, very expert at catching American attention. Kim claims that he's the leader of a very powerful country. Well, if he's a leader of a very powerful country, he ought to get major attention in the United States and in other places. And to do that, he needs a little boost. And so he uses holidays as one way to do that.
Right. And against that background, Professor Kim, what are your thoughts on talks about a seventh nuclear test by North Korea within days?
Of course, already Dr. Bennett emphasized the seventh nuclear test is coming soon. The left thing is only timing. The U.S. intelligence agency, IAEA, and the Iraq Joint Chiefs of Staff all recognize that North Korea is a full lady for the seventh nuclear weapon test. And then Kim Jong-un says now it's golden timing of the seventh nuclear weapon test as a warning sign to the Iraq and the U.S. So it'll be very soon, or before or after the Iraq-U.S. combined exercise this summer.
Right, I see. And Dr. Bennett, China and Russia recently vetoed a UN motion for stronger sanctions against North Korea, which was led by the U.S. in response, of course, to Pyongyang's latest missile tests. Do you predict a similar impasse within the UN Security Council, even in the event of a nuclear test by North Korea?
Oh, yes. I think China and Russia will continue to try to lower the sanctions, actually, on North Korea. They believe that we've gone too far, and they don't seem to be suffering the concerns of North Korean nuclear tests and missile tests the same way we are. We've got to try and make it clear to them. We need to demonstrate that if North Korea does an ICBM test, there are going to be serious implications of that. And then they may change their approach. But until we demonstrate that we're prepared to impose a penalty on North Korea that will be substantial, we're not going to get there.
Right, I see. And Professor Kim, pundits claim that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has perhaps confirmed to Kim Jong-un the importance of nuclear weapons in addressing external threats, and that accordingly talks or calls, that is, for complete denuclearization here on the Korean Peninsula will fall on deaf ears. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Russian-Ukraine war is better to the North Korea. Of course, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons and believed security guarantee from the West at the time. But Ukraine is different from North Korea in some cases. Ukraine did not develop the nuclear weapons and did not have a command and country system because of Russia had. But the lesson of Russian-Ukraine war are clear. Self-defense capability is much more important than their alliance. So denuclearized Ukraine is now under attack from the nuclear Russia. So Iraq, Libya, and Ukraine lessons the North Korea as a negative lesson for denuclearization.
Right. And Dr. Burnett, then staying with that, given the tragic events unfolding over in Ukraine, it appears highly unlikely that North Korea will surrender its nuclear ambitions. And given this scenario then, what are your thoughts on the feasibility of the South Korean and the US policy of denuclearization here on the Korean Peninsula?
Well, I think going to zero nuclear weapons isn't going to happen. So do the South Korean people. The polls indicate that very few people believe that will ever happen. The key question is, can we slow their production initially and eventually bring them down to a lower level? Their level is way above what they need for deterrence purposes, which they claim to be their major objective. 25 nuclear weapons would be quite ample for that. You can demonstrate that analytically. And yet they're probably up in the 50 or so range, maybe 100. So what we've got to do is to stop their production, which the IAEA chief says is going full bore straight ahead. And we've got to then try to lower them But getting to zero, that's just not going to be feasible.
Right, so that's not likely then. Professor Kim, during the first 5 months of this year alone, North Korea has tested its missile capabilities on 17 different occasions. How do you explain the frequency and also the variety of missile tests?
Yes, North Korea has its own schedule for developing its capability regardless of the international situation. And North Korea clearly know China and Russia will never join any US-led UN sanction against North Korea for the next few years because of the international situation. So North Korea enjoyed this golden opportunity and seems to give up any negotiation or talks with the US and the new ROK administration for the next 5 years. And also another thing is that domestically, North Korea needs strong defense capability because now it's face difficulty of economy and COVID-19 situation.
Right, it is, of course. And Dr. Bennett, contrary to expectations, though, North Korea's latest act of provocation did not take place during President Biden's Asia trip. Some scholars say that this inaction, perhaps, on North Korea's part was an indication of its wariness. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we have to remember that just because President Biden was here didn't mean North Korea was ready for a test. I mean, remember, North Korea's Hwasong-17 test back in March blew up less than 20 kilometers above the airport where it was launched. They can't be ready every day for doing it. We don't know if they were ready or not. So we don't know whether the signal they were sending was, we're being a little bit careful, or whether the signal they were sending was, we just weren't ready. I mean, look at it. What happened? They still had one missile that completely failed. That is an indication that they weren't as ready as they would have wanted to be.
Right. And Professor Kim, shortly after North Korea launched its missiles on Thursday last week, that is, South Korea and US militaries each launched a land-to-land missile, one to the east coast, of course, and some 30 South Korean fighter jets performed an elephant walk, if you will, on the tarmac. How do you interpret these responses?
Yeah, unfortunately, on the Korean Peninsula, arms race and the new Cold War already began. When the President Moon and the President Trump left the Blue House and the White House, Kim Jong-un sent a farewell letter to the President Moon, and the nuclear experiment was over. So now the Cold War began, and North Korea will never negotiate with the Yoon administration and the Biden administration. So even if the maybe Trump will react as the president in 2024, while Democratic Party of the ROK with the presidential election in 2027, North Korea will sink again. But until then, the new Cold War will be continue, and provocation leading human casualty will be happen very soon, like the Yeonpyeong Island attack or Cheonan sinking incident.
Right, that is quite a bleak outlook, of course. Dr. Bennett, North Korea's state-run media has been unusually silent about the country's latest missile launches. What are your thoughts regarding this particular silence?
Well, I think in part they don't want to aggravate the situation any more than necessary. Also, we don't know how extensive the failures were. Remember that right after the Hwasong-17 failed in March, North Koreans were going around in the area saying, oh, it was just liars who said that that missile failed. There wasn't any launch. So I think they're being very careful. They've had another failure. They may have had others. I mean, when we previously saw 3 missiles launched, the launcher carries 4 missiles and yet only 3 launched. So they're concerned that their performance isn't necessarily what Kim needs. What does Kim have that creates him as a great leader? His military, his missiles, his nuclear weapons. It's not food, it's not industry, it's not diplomacy. He's got to have nuclear weapons and missiles as the key to demonstrating his people his empowerment. And that he's going to be very careful about.
Right. And keeping in mind what Dr. Bennett has just said, then Professor Kim, what do you propose in dealing with North Korea, perhaps then, to ensure peace and stability here in this part of the world? I mean, against the grim background that you drew, of course, earlier.
Unfortunately, in the US-China competition and the Russian-Ukraine war, it is almost impossible for peace on the Korean Peninsula for a while. North Korea problem is not independent. It's part of the international situation problem. So North Korea now see all the friends like China and Russia as a partner, while the new ROK administration will join the Quad or Five Eyes country as well as the security cooperation with Japan and the US. So there is almost no chance for peace and stability with North Korea. And North Korea have not traditionally believed conservative government in South Korea.
Right, unfortunately. Dr. Bennett, this year also marks the 140th anniversary of diplomatic ties between South Korea and the US. That being said, what looks to be the toughest challenge to bilateral ties as we look ahead to greater collaboration?
Well, I think we have to figure out how to deal with the evolving threat. You know, having nuclear weapons in North Korea, not 1 or 2 or 3, but maybe 50 or 100 nuclear weapons, that really changes the nature of the alliance. We've got to be prepared to deal with that, not treating it as just a little bit of an extension on conventional warfare. This is a huge change. It's not the way we dealt with it in Europe. In Europe in the 1980s, we viewed that conventional and nuclear warfare were going to happen simultaneously. And we had to prepare for the two to integrate and make sure we were going to succeed to the two at the same time. That's a challenge which our two countries haven't worked out in terms of working with each other, and a real opportunity because that's the future. And that's where we can build deterrence, I believe, that will bring peace and security. You have a child who's misbehaving as a teenager, you don't turn to him and say, oh, it's okay, go right ahead, no problem. You try to impose some discipline while showing increased love. And that combination, just like President Kim Dae-jung said in his inaugural address almost 25 years ago, that combination is what it is going to take.
Right. And Professor Kim, you mentioned COVID-19 earlier on. How does North Korea's campaign, that is, against the pandemic, look to perhaps affect Kim Jong-un's power over his people, do you think?
Yeah, today COVID-19 situation is not good for North Korea. But anyway, North Korea Kim's regime survived in the 1990 famine. So COVID-19 is almost nothing compared to 1990. So North Korea will seek anyway the survival strategy by seeking vaccination or assistance from China. And North Korea-China-Russian partnership will be strengthened against the US ROK-Japan cooperation. So with China and Russian support, no problem for North Korea, the survival of Kim's regime.
Right. And going back to your comments about what former President Kim Dae-jung said about engaging North Korea, then, do you suppose that North Korea's challenges against COVID-19 could perhaps serve as opportunities for constructive engagement between the international community and Pyongyang?
Oh, absolutely. I think we have wonderful opportunities. Again, you have to offer a carrot and a stick. You can't just apply the stick. You've got to try and indicate to North Korea, we're not hostile towards the North. That's not what we have in mind. We're simply trying to rein in their misbehavior. And if you look at it, who's more hostile, Kim or Biden? I think Kim is far more hostile. So we've got to try and create an image in North Korea and in South Korea and in China and the United States that we're trying to rein this in, and to do so, we've got to have an innovative approach. We've got to be rethinking our opportunities.
Right. And talking about innovative approach, Dr. Bennett, do you suppose that the Biden administration may adopt the strategic patience policy that the Obama administration adopted earlier? I ask because there are concerns about how this calls for denuclearization, in the absence of engagement efforts, may simply provide North Korea with just more time to advance their nuclear capabilities. What are your thoughts?
You may remember in April last year, in 2021, the White House concluded their North Korea policy study. And when the White House press advisor made her statement, she said, we are no longer going to do strategic patience. She completely ruled it out. And the next day or so, President Biden said, no, we're going to apply stern deterrence from now on. And yet they've done the opposite. They've done the continued, largely speaking, strategic patience. So now there needs to be a change. But my sense is this is really an opportunity for President Yoon. You know, the U.S. is really tied up with the Ukraine situation, with Russia threatening to go nuclear potentially. This is a time where the Yoon administration, working with the Biden administration, really ought to take the initiative And we're not going to negotiate with Kim. He refuses to do that. But why give him the initiative? Why don't we take it back and put a proposal on the table? We know his military is hearing outside information. So why don't we put a proposal on the table that would be attractive and make the next steps?
Right, by the Yoon administration then?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Wait, working with the Biden administration.
All right, Dr. Burnett, as always, thank you very much for your insight and your time today. And Professor Kim, thank you very much for your thoughts as well.
Thank you very much.
Well over 7% of the energy generated in South Korea last year came from renewable sources. Now, this is reportedly a record high share of energy from these sources that are from the sun, the wind, and hydroelectric power. The state-run Korea Electric Power Corporation also says South Korea produced more than 43,000 gigawatt hours of electricity from renewable energy sources in the year 2021, 3.5 times higher than a decade ago amid the former administration's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Meanwhile, South Korea's recycling efforts have received a bit of global recognition given their potential to ensure a sustainable future. Our Choi Min-jung explains.
A pile of waste lined up on a conveyor belt, being sorted out before being sent on for another shot at life.
Much of the trash we throw away ends up in garbage treatment facilities like this one. Some materials are sorted out and transformed into a new product, but the majority are still not suitable for recycling.
South Korea is the world's third biggest producer of plastic waste. More than 80% of plastic bottles are thrown away for recycling, but only 20% of what's put in the trash is actually recycled.
There are many cases where recyclable garbage is not thrown away properly and is sometimes mixed with food waste, so there is the difficulty of having to reorganize the trash by material. This can't be done solely by using machines, so people working here have to hand-pick the trash as well.
To increase the number of items that go on to be recycled, Koreans are advised to follow 4 steps. Empty, rinse, remove, and dispose. People should empty bottles or packaging and rinse away any foreign substances, remove any plastic labels or tape attached to the waste, and throw them away in appropriate garbage bags. People should also make sure to throw away transparent plastic bottles separately from colored ones, as transparent ones are considered better materials for recycling.
We hope people make sure that they throw away transparent plastic bottles properly by removing labels before disposal, because these bottles are recycled into thread used to make clothes.
Those that do not comply with disposal guidelines could face penalties of up to around $785. Although there's still much work to do, South Korea clinched the number 10 spot in the Green Future Index 2022, thanks to waste management systems such as these. A total of 76 countries were ranked by the MIT Technology Review based on their capacity for a sustainable future. And the World Economic Forum cited the ranking when they highlighted South Korea as one of 10 world leaders in building a greener future. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
And South Korean companies are seeking to make greater inroads into the global defense market. And in line with these efforts, the military here has been testing a locally developed armored vehicle that promises protected mobility. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Pei Eun-ji tells us what this means.
An armored vehicle drives through a military base. It even drives through mud easily without getting stuck. It can carry up to 11 people, including 8 soldiers and 3 crew members. Its name is Redback, an upgraded version of South Korea's K-21. For the past 6 weeks, the South Korean military has been testing it at this army base in Gangwon-do, located northeast of Seoul. This Redback 42-ton armored vehicle is equipped with anti-tank guided missiles, as you can see right here. It also has radar on all 4 sides to accurately detect and hit targets. It can also be equipped with a 30mm cannon and a 7.62mm machine gun. The Redback is an infantry field vehicle, or IFV, a type of armor fighting vehicle used to carry infantry into battle while providing direct fire support. As for its speed, it can move up to almost 70 kilometers per hour on roads. Even on rough terrains, it can move at around 45 kilometers per hour.
Right now in Ukraine, many Russian military vehicles are being destroyed and a lot of them got stuck in mud. So it's important to have the active protection system and a high level of mobility like our Redback.
The test run is expected to help the South Korean developer export the Redback to other countries, such as the US, Australia, and Europe.
By having our army test this vehicle, we will be able to provide more data based on our experience. So this is going to help our local firm gain the upper hand when competing with other countries in the global defense market.
The Redback was specially designed to meet the requirements of the Australian Army. It's currently under review after being shortlisted as one of the final 2 models for Australia's project to buy 450 new infantry fighting vehicles. Earlier this year, it went through trials to check its field performance in Australia. The successful bidder will be selected later this year. Peunji, Arirang News.
In this week's feature segment, my colleague Shin Yeon sheds light on eSports here in South Korea and walks us through its raging popularity and future prospects. Do take a look. South Korea is one of the forerunners in esports. It was one of the first in the world to come up with concepts like game leagues and professional gamers. And it all started around the late 1990s at PC rooms, like the one where I'm at right now. People would gather with their friends to play online games and watch each other. PC room management noticed this trend and started holding tournaments against each other to choose the best gamer in each district. Back then, the most popular game was StarCraft. Decades later, esports has grown exponentially here in Korea. And let's find out how.
The history of esports can be traced back to StarCraft. Released in 1998, this online game instantly made it big. Because Korea had just the right infrastructure, PC rooms. Unlike computers at home, these internet cafes had high-speed internet and top-notch hardware.
StarCraft became a national game. Students would rush to PC rooms after school. Adults would come right after work. Everyone was playing it. Because StarCraft and online games became so popular, South Korean broadcasters decided to televise some offline matches. Nobody had thought about it before. The combination of gaming and broadcasting hit the jackpot. It turned out users enjoyed watching others play because they could relate to them and learn some hacks themselves.
From playing games to watching games, South Korea had started a new trend, and as society became more digital, esports inevitably became bigger. A range of new broadcast platforms emerged, making game streaming easier and more accessible. New games have been released and added to the esports category. The biggest esports game in Korea right now is League of Legends. The game has over 150 million users around the world, and 16% of them are based in Korea. League of Legends holds 2 major global esports tournaments, Mid-Season Invitational and World Championship, and in each of them, South Korea has produced a winning team. One of them is T1, with a world-class player named Faker. Faker is the only player in the world to have won the League of Legends World Championship 3 times. Thanks to him, the esports market in Korea has grown even bigger.
This year's MSI is being held here in Busan. Excitement fills the air as fans from around the world came to see one of the biggest international esports tournaments. Even those who couldn't find tickets could still enjoy the MSI experience by taking pictures in front of billboards of their favorite Korean professional gamers. I myself would like to take a picture with T1's Faker.
I couldn't get tickets to all the matches, so I came to watch just one, but it was disappointing that I couldn't go to all of them. It would have been fun.
I actually went to MSI to see Team T1 play in person, but I also came here to take pictures as if I'm standing up close to my favorite pro gamers.
After realizing just how popular pro gamers are, companies started approaching esports teams about potential sponsorship deals. Brand partnerships have become the foundation on which the esports market has been built. Industry insiders believe that sponsorships accounted for more than 60% of global esports revenues in 2021.
They have the right messaging because we have a captive audience who's second screen focused. So we have high-end digital users, and so I think advertisers and partners really saw esports as an opportunity to kind of expand their reach to the younger consumers.
The domestic esports industry has seen double-digit growth almost every year. The average annual growth rate from 2015 to 2019 was 17.9%.
감사합니다. You can tell just how big esports is here in Korea because there's an orchestra performance with the country's most renowned classical musicians playing the iconic music from the game League of Legends.
This sort of performance was first held last year. The game's developer, Riot Games, said they've been holding this sort of event after recognizing the growing fan base in Korea.
It's no doubt that Korea is the mecca for esports. There's just so much demand for it. We've seen tickets for this orchestra performance sell like hotcakes since last year. You can sense the excitement as fans dress up as their favorite characters and run out during the intermission to buy merchandise.
Yes, sir. To even have more fun at this event, many fans have dressed up as their favorite game characters. 혹시 오늘 어떤 캐릭터로 오셨을까요?
정령용 애쉬 코스프레 했어요. 저는 모르가나 코스프레 했습니다. 리그 오브 레전드의 케이틀린이라는 캐릭터 있어요.
전 리그 오브 레전드의 전투토끼 미포 오늘 할 것 같습니다.
그럼 저희 돌아가면서 각자 시그니처 포즈랑 대사할까요?
잘한 말로 세상을 평정해주지.
날개가 꺾였다고 내 의지까지 꺾인 건 아니야.
오늘 빵 한마디로 하겠습니다.
Esports are getting more views than many conventional sports. Game research company Newzoo found that by 2018, the number of people who watched esports topped over 167 million people. That's much more than the number who watched Major League Baseball. Since then, esports viewership has jumped by an average 14% each year. That's why esports has been selected as an official medal sport at the 19th Asian Games for the first time ever.
Our country is already well known for its advanced methods of training professional gamers. We will hone this training system by allocating more of our budget and expanding the required infrastructure before the games. We're also hoping to launch more policies that can protect gamers and secure a fair gaming environment. Ultimately, we hope to produce more world-class gamers like Faker.
To live up to the reputation of being the home of esports, Team South Korea is doing its best to prepare for the Asian Games. 신예은, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. US President Joe Biden traveled to Texas on Sunday to comfort families in the town of Uvalde following the nation's deadliest school shooting in a decade, in which 19 students and 2 teachers were killed. Wiping away tears during their visit to makeshift shrines at Robb Elementary School, the President and the First Lady laid down white roses and paid their respects to the victims. The visit comes as federal officials announced they would review the slow response by law enforcement. There has also been anger over a decision made by authorities during the incident, where they allowed the shooter to remain in a classroom for nearly an hour. Heavy rains and landslides in northeastern Brazil over the weekend have killed at least 56 people and injured 25. Civil defense forces for the state of Pernambuco have said that 3,900 people have also lost their homes. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro announced on Sunday that the military would assist those impacted, adding that he will personally travel to the stricken area on Monday to assess the situation. Officials say Brazil's northeast has suffered from exceptionally high volumes of rain, with some areas recording more rain in 24 hours than the total expected for May. A plane carrying 22 people went missing in Nepal on Sunday, with officials saying that cloudy weather has prevented helicopters from searching the flight's last known location. Meanwhile, state-owned Nepal television reported that villagers had seen an aircraft on fire at the foot of a Himalayan mountain. According to officials, the 43-year-old Tara airplane took off from the tourist town of Pokhara and was headed toward Jomsom, some 80 kilometers away. Contact was lost just 5 minutes before landing. Nepal has a record of air accidents, as its weather can change suddenly and airstrips are typically built in mountainous areas. Thousands of motorcyclists rolled through the streets of Washington, D.C. on Sunday to raise awareness of issues facing veterans in the United States. The annual 87-kilometer Rolling to Remember event hopes to shine a light on veteran suicide prevention and increase efforts to locate prisoners of war and the more than 82,000 service members still missing in action. Spectators reflected on the importance of the day, the problems facing America, and the sacrifices of fallen soldiers. The bikers traditionally hold the event just before Memorial Day, a national holiday set aside to remember those who died in the line of duty. In the UK, ahead of Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee, fans of the Queen's favourite dog gathered at a London cafe on Sunday to celebrate the breed. Corgis attending the event were served dog biscuits and a canine-friendly cappuccino, also called a puppuccino. This comes just days ahead of the Platinum Jubilee, which takes place from June 2nd to June 5th to mark Queen Elizabeth's 70th year on the throne. During that time, she has owned more than 30 corgis, including 14 generations of the same dog family. Buckingham Palace has announced that the British monarch plans to attend a number of events during the 4-day celebration. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good Monday afternoon. Even if the rain in and around Seoul metropolitan area has already fizzled out, we do have rain in the forecast later today again, as more rain clouds push in from the north. The amount will be small but enough to make you wet, so I hope you brought your umbrella today. And that brings an abrupt halt to recent unusually high temperatures. So Seoul is seeing 25 degrees, while that is 5 degrees lower than yesterday. So please be mindful of wide gaps in readings and be careful not to catch a cold. But the rain won't be enough to ease the dry weather. We have to be concerned about wildfires on the east coast and in a few areas of Gyeongsang-do province. Please take extra cautions to prevent fires. Well, things could improve later today, so we'll keep you updated if anything changes. Well, tomorrow skies will be bright, and from Wednesday on local election day, temperatures will begin to rise again. Now let's take a look at the worldwide weather conditions.
That brings us to the end of Monday's edition of the Daily Report. We'll be back with more coverage tomorrow. Join us then. Thank you for now.